Good morning, everybody. My name's Hattie Llewellyn-Davis, and I'm the chair of Princess Alexandra Hospital Trust, and welcome to our AGM. It feels like a very auspicious day to have an annual general meeting with the Darcy report having come out today, and I'm sure that will spell more changes for all of us in the next few years. I want to welcome everybody for coming along today and to thank you all for attending the meeting. This year, we've decided to hold a completely remote AGM. Our experience last year when we had a mixed virtual and in-person AGM, we found that the majority of people attended remotely and that they found it easier to do that. So this year we're going for an entirely remote one, but please let us know whether that works for you. And welcome and thank you for coming. So next slide, please. This is the approximate running order for the annual general meeting. Immediately after I speak, there is in fact one extra bit, which is that Tom Lafferty, our new chief executive, will speak immediately after me, and we will have a chance to say a big welcome to Tom. After all the presentations, there will be time for everyone to ask questions. Please either put your questions into the chat box or raise your virtual hand and we will get to you. We have one of us is monitoring the chat box, so we will make sure we pick up on everything. Next slide, please. It has been a time of change for Princess Alexandra. We have continued to make progress on our performance, our service delivery and our finances, and Sharon and Tom will speak in depth about that in a moment or two. But I wanted to concentrate just for a few minutes on the changes in our leadership. New slide. The first massive thank you is a thank you to Lance McCarthy. Lance has been a devoted and skilled chief executive who served us brilliantly for 7 years, taking us out of special measures, driving our performance and improvement. We are really proud that he's now the chief executive from the NHS Foundation Trust, and we wish him well in his new role. They are incredibly lucky to have him. New slide. I also wanted to say a big thank you to Helen Howe, who was one of our non-exec directors, and to John Keddy, one of our associate non-exec directors, both of whom have reached the end of their term of office. I'm really delighted to say that Helen will in fact remain with us as she becomes the first independent chair of the Princess Alexandra Hospital Charitable Foundation. I also need to just cheat slightly and say a thank you to Rob Gurlis. Rob, in fact, retired in the current financial year, not in the last one. But Rob is known to many of us as a local GP and involved in almost everything in West Essex. He also will remain in contact with us in his role as chair of Stella Healthcare, one of our partners in the Urgent Treatment Centre. And to replace them, we are delighted to have Oge Ostinchukwu and Ralph Kulbeck join us as non-execs. New slide, please. I also wanted for a moment or two to reflect on 2 very sad deaths amongst the board in the last year. The first is Getch, loved by all of us for her warmth, her compassion, her absolute drive for fairness in everything she did. Totally values-driven chief people officer and incredibly sadly missed by all of us, taken far too young and in a very shocking and deeply upsetting way for all of her colleagues. Getch, we miss you. New slide. Less well known, but equally a massive impact to all of us is Kim Handel. Kim was one of our non-execs and the chair of our Quality Committee and Maternity Safety Champion for the Trust. Kim was with us for less than a year, but she had a massive impact on everyone she worked with and had the absolute command and authority of a retired chief nurse. I also need to reflect that it is not only the board who have lost colleagues in the last year. We have lost colleagues throughout the organisation at various levels, and I absolutely recognise the impact that has had on them, on their colleagues and their teams, and need to reflect and look after those staff who've been through a difficult period through that. New slide. And now to the thank yous. Thank you to all of my exec team colleagues, to all of my non-exec team colleagues, but most importantly to all of our PAH people who provide an amazing service in very, very challenging times. I think one of the things I most love about Princess Alexandra is that we never give up. Lifts go out of order, theatres get closed for ventilation problems, whatever it is, we just keep providing the best care to our population. And I thank every single one of you for your part in delivering that service. I wanted to recognise our patient panel who keep us honest and keep our feet on the ground at all times, and especially congratulations to Anne Nutt for her British Empire Medal, which she has been awarded in recognition for her amazing service to Princess Alexandra. My thanks to all our partners and stakeholders, and I'm not going to list them all. There are far too many of them, but I absolutely recognise that without them, we couldn't provide a service. And my last thank you is to Sharon and to her fellow exec team colleagues for stepping into the breach, for becoming our interim chief exec, and for keeping the show on the ground, along with her other exec team colleagues who have changed roles in order to fill all of those gaps. New slide. My last pleasure is to pass to Tom Lafferty. Tom, this is your introduction to Princess Alexandra. We are all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction, Hattie. I really appreciate that. So yes, I'm Tom Lafferty, currently working as Deputy Chief Executive at Kingston Hospital and Hounslow and Richmond Community Trust in London. But I can't wait to start. On the 4th of November, I'm going to be the CEO at PAH. And the first thank you that I want to say is thank you to all the staff and stakeholders that I've met so far who have warmly welcomed me and made me feel so at home in the organisation. Having said that, I realise that I've only met a handful of people thus far, and one of my priorities when I start is to get out and about as much as I possibly can to meet as many of our fantastic staff as quickly as possible. And actually talking about our fantastic staff, the whole point of this session is to reflect back on the previous financial year and recognise the tremendous and numerous achievements of the brilliant workforce that we have. As Hattie said, though, doesn't mean that it's easy. I recognise the challenges that face the organisation, that face the healthcare system in which it operates, whether those be financial challenges or operational challenges like emergency pressures at the front door. But having said all that, actually the future could be really exciting. We've got some amazing opportunities ahead of us. I know that in the slides to come, we'll talk about the rollout of the electronic health record in November, around about the time I start, actually. The weekend before I start, that's due to go live. A real chance for digital transformation and to release time to care for our patients. Another priority of mine and something I'm equally excited about is the chance to get on with our new hospital programme initiative and have a new hospital for the people of Harlow and West Essex. I'll be lobbying hard, I'll be fighting hard to ensure that those plans remain on track. And thirdly, I guess, in summary, the thing I'm excited about is the chance to join up and integrate some of the care that we provide to our local population. So when I say integration, I'm talking about joining up services across the acute environment, community services, primary care, so that from the patient experience, it feels singular. It feels like one health and care service, not several different health and care services. The last thing I want to say is my own individual thank yous, and in many respects, it echoes Hattie's earlier comments. So firstly, thank you to Lance McCarthy. Lance absolutely supported me and was very generous of his time to me when I was preparing to apply for the role of CEO at PAH. If you look at Lance's track record over the 7 years, there can be no doubting the huge impact that he's had on the organisation and its fortunes. And I'd just like to thank him as well for his care, diligence and leadership shown to the organisation. He's going to be a fantastic CEO at Frimley Health. I also want to make mention of Getch as well. So I met Getch on a handful of occasions at the time that I was applying to be CEO. She was always very accommodating, supportive to me, but actually so many people have spoken to me about Getch. And the two things that stand out there, firstly, what a brilliant chief people officer she was, what a brilliant leader of people she was on the way to a fantastic career in the NHS. But more importantly than all of that, actually, just the fact that she was a lovely human being. And I know that she'll be very sorely missed within the organisation. And lastly, to Sharon and the executive team. So I've had need to speak to Sharon on several occasions over the last few weeks and months, and it's clear to me that Sharon's just doing an amazing job. of leading the organisation, representing it at external stakeholder meetings, making sure that we put our best foot forward, and of course, bringing forward the executive team, unifying the team to deliver the strategy. So thank you, Sharon. Can't wait to start working with you for real. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me at this AGM, and I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome to Princess Alexandra. We're passing Sharon to you, I think, for the reflections on the year.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Hattie, and thank you, Tom. And just to say, really looking forward to Tom joining the organisation and taking us through with his leadership in terms of the next phase and exciting journey as we go forward. So hello, everybody. My name is Sharon McNally. I'm the Interim Chief Executive, and when Tom joins us on the 4th of November, so we're just going to go on to mute. When Tom joins us on the 4th of November, I will go back to my substantive role, which is the Chief Nurse for the organisation and the Deputy Chief Executive, of which I've been very humbled and proud to be for the last 5.5 years here. So I'm going to take you through a slide pack. I'm going to pick up on the key items over the last year that have informed Lance's and the Chief Exec reports into the board, and also some of the key items that we've been briefing our staff on. We're going to pick up on some of the headlines, some of the amazing achievements that we've done, but also just reflect on some of the challenges that we've faced over the last year. We'll also tie it all back in because we have a strategic direction in this organisation to be modern, integrated and outstanding, and we've continued to make amazing progress with that over the year. And then I'll have the absolute delight to hand over to Miss VJ, who will pick up on one of those transforming our cares and how we use our estate and our digital infrastructure going forward. And she will take us through some of the improvements we've had in terms of taking forward with our robotic surgery. So as we move through the slide pack, I'm not going to read the slides out to you. Please take the time absolutely to do that, but I will absolutely pick up on some of the key narrative as we go forward. So next slide, please. So over the last year, I think the first thing to say is we have faced 10 periods of industrial action. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our staff for their unified approach to this, to working collectively as one team in support of each other, and also to our community for their understanding and support over those periods of industrial action. And we absolutely recognise that's having the impact and the impact that has across our communities, both within our locality and also nationally. Also really great to see that our CQC inspection, which happened in May last year, went to our emergency department and recognised improvements with our emergency department quality of care and our safety. And that's absolute testament to the hard work and dedication of our staff working within that department. Next slide, please. As Hattie has said, and Tom has also picked up, we continue to work with the national programme in terms of the new hospital to develop our business case, and we've continued to drive that forward over the last year. We'll absolutely recognise that following confirmation in May last year in terms of funding for the new hospital programme, there has been changes around the government, and just to reflect around the spending review announcement that happened following the new government in July of this year. And we are continued to be linked into the new hospital programme, continuing to drive forward as case, as Tom has said. Whilst that is happening, the reason that we're on the new hospital programme is because we have a hospital estate which is not fit for the future, and we absolutely recognise that it's a significant risk in this organisation and is well known. And we continue to absolutely be on the front foot to make sure that we manage that risk. And I'd like to, at this point, to say a massive thank you to our estates and facilities team for the work that they do every day, and to our staff for working in some less than ideal environments. Just examples of what we've been doing to keep our estate fit is that we have opened a new aseptic suite. That's a pharmacy initiative for how we manage our drugs for those patients who need chemotherapy. We've also been working on our medical gas infrastructure, and we have also been looking in terms of how we optimise some of our spaces within our emergency department. Next slide, please. In July last year, we launched our drive for our Alex Health, which is part of our digital strategy. And in November this year, as Thomas said, we will be going live with our electronic health record. It's the biggest transformation that this organisation will have seen, and we are incredibly excited about that. So Alex Health is absolutely core to driving forward in a different way about how we use our data and how we digitalise, both for our staff, but absolutely for our patients as well. Next slide, please. Throughout this, we absolutely recognise the importance of investing in our people. And in November last year, we saw the launch of our consultant development programme. We also continue to work hard across our partnerships and maximise the relationships and the opportunities that happens in terms of how we make a difference to our patients. And in November last year, we opened our integrated urgent treatment centre. And just to give you some idea in terms of the impact that has been having. So our integrated urgent treatment centre is in partnership with our local GPs and our community service providers. And it's really there to make sure that our patients are seen in the safest place, providing timely and effective care. So we've seen over 14,000 patients across that treatment centre since it opened in November. That's absolutely amazing, and that's from November to March. So thank you to everyone that's been involved as part of that. And we will continue to work in a way with our local healthcare system in terms of West Essex and also widely across the system to make sure that we absolutely deliver the best pathways for our patients. Next slide, please. Part of that is how we don't always bring things onto the hospital site, and that we absolutely make things easy for access for our patients. So over the last year, you'll see we've continued to work on our planning and our preparatory work to open a community diagnostic centre, and we are on track to open that towards the autumn of next year. Next slide, please. I've talked earlier about the need to absolutely be focused on our staff and invest in our staff, but it's really also important that we hear the voice and the views of our staff. They're absolutely vital to understand how we take forward and how we make this the best place to work. In October last year, we undertook the National Staff Survey, and I'm delighted and thank you to all of our 1,900 people who responded to that. And we are seeing an improving response rate. So really pleased to say we saw significant improvements in our staff engagement and our staff morale. And critically, there were two measures that I'm really pleased to report back on. So our staff measures for recommending this hospital as a place to work saw a significant improvement by 6% over that period. And also our staff saying they're happy with the standard of care if a friend or a family member came into the organisation, also significantly improved by 5%. So thank you to everybody that is involved as part of that. The staff survey is just one part of how we hear our staff voice and how we make sure that we work together as one team. And we also do that through staff forums, staff networks, our Freedom to Speak Up Guardians, and also our professional advocates. So thank you to everybody who is informing our way forward. Next slide, please. So these look like quite busy slides with lots of words on them. I'm going to let you read this. I'm not going to read them through in detail, but I'm just going to pause here. So this slide and the slide after this recognises the impact that our staff are having to our patients and to their colleagues, both across our hospital, both across our community, both regionally and nationally. It is an absolutely amazing accolade that we see here, and we'll go on to the next slide, please, if that's okay. And all of these nominations awards are just so very well deserved, and we absolutely know that we've got amazing people working for us. And at this point, just like to just echo my thanks to everybody that works here day in and day out. And so whilst we see some of the awards that we see here, actually there are other things we're incredibly proud of. So our teams and our services are also making massive difference in terms of what we see for our patient safety and our outcomes. And just a couple of examples of that is that our hospital mortality rate. So if you come in here, what is the likelihood of you getting out of here and your mortality? We are now lower than expected. And that's amazing accolade to the care that we give. And to our transfusion department, so our blood transfusion is recognised as one of the safest places in the country to have a blood transfusion. It's just a small indication of the amazing work that goes on in this organisation day in and day out. So next slide, please. So at the beginning, I talked about our vision, our PHT 2030. And we're now going to move on to the next couple of slides just to understand some of the wonderful work and progress we've made around that in the last year. So again, I won't go through these slides in detail, but just let you read through those. Just a couple of things that I would pick out. So what is really important is that we don't stand still, that we continue to look ahead. And we're doing that through the development of our clinical strategies. So thank you to everyone that's been involved as part of that, and also to our strategy team, who are really the driving force and the expertise around that. We're also looking to say, actually, how do we use the data that we have to understand what the complexity of our communities and where we might need to do things differently to affect our care outcomes. And we've already picked up a little bit around hearing our voice and investing in our staff, but that is all to do with what you see on the right-hand side of the slide. So to deliver great care, we need to have an amazing culture in this organisation. We are absolutely committed as a golden thread to continue to make improvements around our culture. Next slide, please. So this talks around the progress and commitment, which is central to modernising our organisation. And on this side, I'd just like to pick up around the digital agenda. So we've heard around our Alex Health and the launch of our electronic health record, but we are doing more than that. And you will see on the bottom of that slide around our use of Alex Health. And also within that, our use of something called Dragon Medical. It's a very complex term, but essentially that is around how we have a digital translation for some of our letters, and that is making a massive difference to our patients. So for instance, the turnaround times of when a patient sees a clinician in this organisation to when that letter arrives has been significantly reduced, and I'd just like to thank everyone that's been involved as part of that. Thank you. So, in summary, we've experienced an incredibly busy year, but we've continued to make amazing progress. Through our emergency department, we've seen over 123,000 people, and a number of those have also attended via ambulance, another 20,000. We've seen 428,000 people through our outpatients department. And we've welcomed new life into our organisation. So you can see there we've had just shy of 4,000 people, babies that were born here. And we continue to reduce our vacancy rate, and we absolutely understand that that is central to feeling a sense of team in the organisation. Next slide, please. And throughout all of that, there is a golden thread, which is our commitment in this organisation to support our patients and the staff that work here. And I'd just like to focus on this point about the impact that our patient panel has in our organisation, and massive thanks to those, and also to our volunteers. And you will see a beautiful little diagram there that says Pets Therapy. That's just one example of our volunteers, and the pets that come in provide joy to our everyone, our visitors in the corridor, and to our patients and to our staff. So a massive thank you to them. So as we look ahead into the next year, we know that we will have challenges. Should we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. We know that the demand for our services will continue. We know that we need to make sure that our access to our services continue to improve. We will absolutely focus on our staff health and well-being, and we will make sure that we continue to reduce the risk of being in an old hospital. We also know that there's absolutely opportunities, so the new hospital programme and our Alex Health will continue to drive our way forward. So next slide, please. So in summary, we'll continue to transform our care. We'll continue to progress with strategic aims to be modern, integrated and outstanding. And we absolutely recognise the strength of working collectively, both across this hospital and across our system. So for me to close on the next slide, I would just like to echo from me my immense thank you to our patients and their relatives, to our local community, to all of our health and care colleagues and third sector colleagues, and to all those people who fundraise and donate to our charity. But above all, just a real heartfelt thank you to all the amazing people that work at the Princess Alexandra and to our volunteers and patient panel. You make a difference every day to those hundreds of thousands of people that access our services. So thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Miss VJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll just share my slides. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Ms. Vardhani Vijay, and I've been a consultant surgeon at Princess Alexandra from 2009. I think I'm joined on the call by two of my clinical colleagues, Ms. Rachna and Mr. Hussain, and Mr. Sukna, who is the operational chair for the robotic committee. So just as background, why robot-assisted surgery? So what was wrong with conventional surgery? So the gold standard for all surgery has been open surgery. It is quick. You can feel things in the area that you're operating on. You have a full range of your wrist motion. But there are lots of issues with long incisions. One is of postoperative pain and analgesia requirements. For major cases, it requires longer stays in the high dependency unit. And in general, the length of stay in hospital and readmissions is more because of complications such as wound infection, chest infections, and in the long term, incisional hernia. From a surgical point of view, for fine tasks in open surgery, there is the issue of surgical tremor as well. And in spite of it being open, there are limited views which are deep in the pelvis or under the diaphragm when you're operating in those areas. So the answer to this was minimally invasive surgery, which was introduced in the 1990s, and that is traditional laparoscopic surgery. Here, there were shorter incisions made, but the whole operation was done by long instruments, which were used by the surgeon at the bedside, sometimes in contortionist positions. There was also a steep learning curve associated with converting from open to laparoscopic, and this resulted in a lot of complications in the early years. You also require a skilled camera person. And in spite of the good views, which are better than open surgery, sometimes in the deeper areas, access is difficult because of the nature of the instruments. So the solution to this, with the advantages of both open and minimally invasive surgery, was robot-assisted surgery, which has been on the scene for the past 20 years. So in this, the instruments are still similar to laparoscopic surgery. The incisions are small, but rather than the surgeon standing at the bedside and holding it, it is held by a robot, and the surgeon controls the robot by sitting in a console in the operating theaters. The instruments are all wristed, so they have a full degree of motion similar to that of open surgery, and access to difficult areas within the abdomen or pelvis are much, much easier because the vision is so immersive and three-dimensional. So that's all right. But obviously a robot is an expensive piece of kit. And the question was, did Princess Alexandra really require a surgical robot to do things better? Now, the main literature for the robot was in urological surgery, especially prostatectomies. And as PH did not do prostates, we weren't really thinking about a robot for a long time. Things changed in May 22 when we went for a conference of the British Indian colorectal surgeons, and a surgeon from one of the adjoining hospitals in Colchester spoke about how they were using the robot for colorectal surgery and were actually on the business case for their third robot at that time because it had made such an impact. So we looked into it a little further and found that actually most of the hospitals around the area had a robot for various different types of surgery, which were not only urology. This indicated a little sense of a health inequality for the people of West Essex. And so we felt that maybe it was time for Harlow to acquire a robot as well. There was another issue which was close to my heart, and that is of surgeon longevity. And looking at the literature, 87% of surgeons who do long-term laparoscopic surgery with high volumes suffer from musculoskeletal problems. And for those who then converted to robotic surgery, 93% felt that it did extend their surgical career. At the time in 2022, laparoscopic surgery in PH was well established. We had a good adoption of it, though 50% of gynecology and 40% of colorectal were still being done open. And these specialties do deliver regional cancer care as well. We do provide some complex pelvic surgery, but most of it is sent to other hospitals. We also had an enhanced recovery program in place for the past 10 years, which had delivered some benefits in length of stay. Added to this was the data from Colchester, where Colchester was a very well-established laparoscopic center, and when they compared their laparoscopic and robotic outcomes, they demonstrated a significant difference in complication rates, conversions, blood loss, and length of stay. So it was time for Harlow to start on their robotic journey, and for this we needed to set up the business case and initially a steering group. As you can see, it was an involvement from a lot of people with good team working across disciplines and across multiple areas of the hospital. All the stakeholders, including IT, CSSD, estates, EBME, and of course theatres, were represented in our steering group. There was also the wider team of people, including anaesthetists, the nursing staff, the scrub team, and very importantly, the registrars who would be the bedside assistants. In a timely fashion, the Royal College of Surgeons also came out with a document as robotics-assisted surgery being the future of surgery, which further enforced the need that Harlow should not be behind the curve on this. So our business case was based on a 7-year projection of how many of our existent open and laparoscopic cases would be converted to robotic surgery in the long term. And based on those conversion rates, with the metrics that we knew from a close-by hospital with real-life metrics, how much potentially we would actually save in terms of money. So it is expensive, but the savings will come from decreased length of stay, ITU cost avoidance, conversions, complications, and 30-day readmission. With the decreased length of stay, there will be incremental surgical bed capacity released for the non-robotic cases which are on the waiting list as well. In addition, R for robot and R for 5 unpriced advantages, which is recruitment, repatriation, reputation, revenue, and staff retention. We then had to go around, look at all the robots in play and choose the best one for our hospital. The Da Vinci robot by Intuitive was the most established with the longest literature review with outcomes, good outcomes. There was a new one at the time on the market, which was Versius by Cambridge Medical Robotics. And now there is even one more, which is Hugo by Medtronic. But with all the data that was there on the Da Vinci, we felt that this was the best, and we went for the most up-to-date model so that we didn't have to upgrade in the near future. So having done all this, the journey involved multiple business case presentations starting in February 2023, with a final meeting with the Director of Finance in February 24 and a sign-off for the robot with a delivery date at the end of the last financial year. Once this was confirmed, then all the activity started in earnest. Theatre 6, which had been deemed to be suitable for the robot, was then refurbished over the Easter weekend. And then the technology training for the surgeons, the staff, and the anesthetists, it all started. Intuitive, the company, has a very well-established training program, which is approved by the Royal College, and so it was a case of following it step by step. From the surgeon's point of view, we had given an assurance to Tom that we would do most of the training in our SPA time, and so it involved a lot of practice to get up to date with the simulator so that we knew exactly what to do when it was a real patient. That's not one of the surgeons, that's Tom getting his scores up in advance. The score had to be at least 90 on each of the various skills, and then we were given a wet lab date to continue. There was the other aspect of having patients ready for the first lists, and this involved reviewing the waiting lists at the time, sometimes talking to other consultants and taking over their patients who were more suitable for robotics. We were told to try and reduce the comorbidity in the patients we selected and the BMI. This, we were finding it fairly difficult to do, but because robotics in the long term will be for all comers, we have relaxed on some of these criteria. We then had to clinically review these patients to make sure that they were still suitable, and then reassure them and consent them for the first few cases. We understand from the patient's point of view, it's a great degree of trust in the surgeon, but the reassurance came from the fact that the initial cases were all proctored, so they had an expert as well in the room, and so there would not be any issues with that. And then the red letter day for Princess Alexandra, which was the 21st of May, when the first robotic case was done here, and it was by the team gynecology. And the first surgical case, general surgical case, was done on the 11th of June, which was by the colorectal team. So what have been the successes and challenges? Now, the Intuitive actually keeps a very close eye on the numbers of cases that we do, and they want maximum utilization of the robot. And they were very pleased that in our first quarter, in which 2 surgeons were trained and 1 had just started off, we had done 67 robotic cases. That is almost as much as the average number in any UK hospital which has a robot. And this is very good indeed. And thanks should go to the theatre, anesthetic, and clinical teams for this. The current status, Ms. Rachna, who is the first gynecologist to go on to the training program, has done 31 patients. Mr. Ghazi is waiting theatre scheduling and a wet lab date. And on the colorectal side, I've done 34 patients with a mixture of hernias, gallbladders, and colectomy. And Mr. Hussain, who's literally started last month, has already done 10. Mr. Durai is starting his first case on the 28th of October. Patient outcomes have been excellent, and most of the hernias, gallbladders, and ovarian cases have been day cases, unless they have been predetermined to be overnight stays due to anesthetic concerns. In fact, some of those cases which the anesthetist felt should stay over were reviewed postoperatively and actually sent home on the same day. The length of stay for benign hysterectomy has only been 1 to 2 days. The average before from the HES data has been 3.5. So there has been an impact on the length of stay. There was one complication of a port site hernia in a frail patient in one of the ports, but this is more a complication of minimally invasive surgery rather than specifically robotic surgery. And from the colorectal cancer patient point of view, 3 of the sigmoid colectomy patients all went home on day 2 or 3 with either no or only a 1-day stay in HDU. Right hemicolectomy patients, they do tend to go into a little bit of postoperative ileus, so we haven't reduced the length of stay much in them at the moment. It has not been without challenges. We wanted the Intuitive Hub, which is the online hub where all the videos are recorded, but that wasn't ready with the first case. It's just come online over the last week or so. Keeping costs low is an ongoing challenge, and it's not something we can do while we are training. But in the long term, we have to look very much and very carefully at what instrumentation we use. Case selection, again, it is a challenge to get the most suitable cases, but like I said, we are expanding our criteria. Theatre access, as you all know, is a challenge because already existing surgeons don't really have regular access to theatres. A lot of backfilling goes on, but with robotics, you do need to have regular access in order to keep your skills up. This is a very good opportunity to upskill our nursing team because there's the option to have surgical care practitioners to do the bedside bit of the robotic surgery. This will give an opportunity for our registrars to be at the console rather than at the bedside, which is sometimes very boring for them. And again, another thing close to my heart is the long-term issue of sustainability and green surgery. So what's the future? The Da Vinci platform can be expanded to other specialties. ENT are using it, endocrine for adrenalectomies. There is the possibility of repatriating some of the urological surgery back to Harlow. Benign upper GI is another area where it can be used, and abdominal wall reconstruction. We send out a lot of abdominal wall reconstructions to other hospitals, and this is something we could do here. So there is, again, the issue of theatre capacity for regular lists when more and more surgeons want to train. We already have another 4 surgeons waiting in the wings ready to train. And this is where other hospitals have already had their second and third robots, and Colchester actually now has 4. So it is time to already start thinking of a second robot for PHT, and we would value any help from the charity people to facilitate this. Finally, thank you. And I think the robotic program integrates with all our values and strategies of being a modern, integrated, and outstanding hospital. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vardini. That was an absolute tour de force. And we're now passing to Tom to talk about our finances. Tom.
Thank you very much, Hattie, and thank you, Vardini. Could you just go on mute? Thank you. I think it's worth noting, and it's really exciting when you see programs like the surgical robot, just to recognise the amount of clinical leadership that is taken and involved in trying to bring forward these cases, because this is about trying to make sure we are now, exactly as Vardini said, modern, integrated and outstanding and on a par with our peers, because it is so essential that we invest in the future, because this is the future, and it's absolutely amazing to see it in place. So thank you so much to the team, and it was a hugely memorable day in my career when I saw it for the first time, because it's probably a bit of a segue into what I'm going to talk about, which is the finances. And the finances are the consequence of everything that we do here in the trust. And as Hattie alluded to in the start, this comes on the day that we've had the Lord Darcy review, much of which is focused on kind of financial aspects and kind of where we find ourselves at this point in the road. But what I'm going to take us through is just where we've been over the last year. And as ever with finance, we're kind of comparing where we are compared to where we've been at a point in the past and trying to make comparisons between them. So I'll try and do that in an engaging way as best I can, recognising the money is never the most fun thing for everyone. But we're going to try and take you through a bit of what we do in terms of our day-to-day budgets, where we've spent money on capital, which includes things like the robot, and where we're going to go next over the year ahead. So if we can just go into the next slide, please. So here we just provide a summary in 2 forms, because it's essential to recognise that while we're reporting on just how we are at PAH, we're part of a system. We're part of Herts and West Essex system, and that's a wider health economy, and that's been part of a move over recent years to make sure that we don't just have to balance our books, we have to balance our books within the system as best we can. And it's essential we look at not just us, the trust, but how we sit compared to others. So the first table on the left here is just exactly how much income we made, how much money we spent, and what that meant in terms of our surplus or deficit for the last year. So if you look at the income, you can see from year to year, our income tends to go up every year. It's to fund things like inflation. We know we've had high inflation over recent times because some of the economic factors we've had globally, and our income goes up to recognise that. At the same time, our expenditure goes up because we have to pay for all of those things. We have to make sure we're paying our staff in line with the national pay awards, which are agreed nationally rather than locally. And as a consequence, every year you'll tend to see that budgets go up across the NHS as we try and meet some of our healthcare needs. Last year, we ran to a deficit. We had a £6 million deficit at the end of the year. So that means we had £6 million more expenditure than we received in income. And that was a small improvement from 22-23, where we had a larger deficit. But it's probably worth noting at this point, we are, as we move towards that system model I just described before, trying to make sure that we're allocating resources across our wider health economy, so across Hertfordshire and West Essex, in a different way. So while our position has improved last year, part of that has been reliant on some support from our commissioners, from kind of the Department of Health nationally, if you would, but some additional funding we've received to help with our in-year position, recognising some of the challenges we face. And we're working to try and make sure across all of our providers in the system, we've got money in the place where it needs to be, and that we're meeting the needs of our population in West Essex. If you look at the table on the right, that just kind of sets out what it looks like for the other providers around us and what it looks like compared to our plan. So last year, though we were in a deficit, it's really important that we, the system, land on a position, and by virtue of where money gets moved around a little, we were able to come in on balance as a system. So we're just about okay, but money remains very, very challenged, as is covered in the Darcy report, and as you will have heard about in recent government announcements in that sense. So it's not easy, but it's essential that we continue to make sure we're maximising the pound for our local population. And I'm going to talk about a few ways about how we do that in a second. Trying to bring this to life a little bit and recognising showing a load of numbers is never the most interesting thing. We've tried to kind of articulate a few things around numbers, not just necessarily the pounds, but if we can skip to the next slide, we've just tried to put in a few key little facts and figures, partly related to our finances and what we do. So firstly, we buy a great deal of stuff in the trust, and we've been always trying to think how you can articulate that. So just if you take bandages alone, something we need to buy less of for our patients who don't need that open surgery that Vardini just relayed. But ultimately, if you just stretch them end to end, they're huge, the amount of just physical consumables that we buy in the trust. We saw on the earlier slide that we have 4,000, just under 4,000 births last year and roughly every year. If you take that and aggregate it over the life we've had a hospital, we could have populated St Lucia alone just by all the patients that we have delivered in the hospital, which is amazing. And it's also probably important to recognise that our obligation is to serving all the patients we serve the best way we can, but we're a very locally focused hospital, and something I really appreciated the first day I ever walked around here when I first came here was just how community focused it is and how many of our local population work here. And we've got nearly 4,500 individuals who are employed at the trust. So we're a huge part of our local life. And in making sure that we pay all of our suppliers, so including those bandage suppliers we alluded to, and everyone else we pay, we're a really important part of the local and national health economy. And I think we got in the update from Sharon earlier that we've got a new finance system. So we're much less paper focused than we used to be. We do a lot of things digitally, but if we were to run off all of the invoices and each of them was just a page in size, you'd be able to cover a fairly sizable football pitch with just the number of invoices we process. And that's part of what the finance team do to help service all of the expenditure that we undertake here at the trust. So we're really big players financially in terms of the local economy, and it requires the support of everybody in the trust to help get the results that we articulated on the previous slide. We've kind of set out a little bit here just to try and again articulate exactly what we spend the money on and how. So if you take the top right graph, we spend roughly 2/3 of our money on pay. So we're a very people-focused business, and we spend roughly 1/3 on non-pay. So that's everything from the consumables to the energy that we use, to everything that we use in terms of our corporate function. So we spend a lot of that money, but we are predominantly a people-focused business. And if you focus on the pay element on the left-hand side, you can see the kind of staffing groups where we spend our money. And as you would anticipate, the vast majority of our money gets spent on nursing and midwifery staff and medical staff, because that's the core of what we do. So it just kind of articulates it. And again, as I said in my brief, the finances are the consequence of everything that we do. And a lot of the themes that were touched upon have got an impact on our finances. And we've kind of tried to articulate three things that we are constantly facing a challenge around. And number one is the estate in which we operate. So we love our trust and we love the hospital site where we are, but we know it's not ideal for the future. We know it's got various developments on it over time, and it's got structural challenges that cost us money to keep the lights on and keep the facilities running. So if we had a better, newer facility, we know we wouldn't face some of the challenges that colleagues in estates and the wider team face on a day-to-day basis in providing care. We also have got healthcare challenges in terms of the population, in terms of getting the right staff in the right places and attracting staff. Now, we've done a huge amount of improvement over the last few years of bringing in permanent staff and recruiting our staff. And one of the themes that has led to us having a challenge is having to use more expensive temporary staff. So being able to recruit the right staff to our hospital has been a huge success, but it remains a challenge because the need for healthcare is only ever increasing. And I mean, we've got a graph there just around energy, but we kind of touched on it that during the last financial year, inflation's probably been higher than it's been certainly in my career. And we've been having to manage those pressures in amongst all the other challenges of making sure we deliver care. So it's a challenge time, but we are rising above it as we always do. If I can just flick to the next slide briefly. The other side of what we spend our money on, because all of what we've talked about so far is our day-to-day budget, but we also have to spend our money on big infrastructure projects, and this is what we call capital. These are the things that are not just our day-to-day, but the longer-term things we need to invest money in. Vardini's robot example earlier was one of the great examples of where we've managed to prioritise funding, not just for backlog and keeping the lights on and the infrastructure in the estate. This has been on transformational medical care. So we don't just spend money on the bricks and mortar. We have to invest in the future, but we have to balance it in the context of a very challenged amount of funding that we have available. And we tried to set out here where we spend our money. We spend a lot of money still on maintaining the estate, on things like ensuring we've got the right power infrastructure. So if we had an issue with our power, we can still provide care to patients. We've spent money on the buildings, maintaining our look and feel as best we can. But we're doing this all in the context of knowing we need a longer term facility that we can use for the future. The other thing that's referenced on here, because this is only the money that we generate ourselves, we've got another pot of money, which I'll touch on in a moment, but we spend a lot on IT, and it's a bit of a direction of travel for the NHS that digital is at the forefront of everything you hear. If you read the Darcy report, digital is very clearly articulated in there. We have to invest in digital, and the electronic health record, our Alex Health programme, is the biggest investment and biggest transformational change we've made in recent times. So investing heavily in all of those areas. The other area that we get funding for is something called public dividend capital, and this is nationally funded money that helps with some of these infrastructure projects. So things like our community diagnostic centre, which we're building over at St Margaret's, and the Alex Health programme itself are receiving significant money from national funding sources, which help in delivering some of what we're trying to generate. So last year we spent, with the two combined, over £30 million on capital. For the year ahead, we're obviously trying to look at making sure we invest in the areas we need while moving on some of those really, really big long-term infrastructure programs. If we can just move to the next slide, please. That's just the public dividend capital coming up there. The year ahead is the year we're currently in, so 24-25, which we're already working through, as has been published recently, is challenging. We know we're still struggling financially as in a number of areas across the NHS. We're no different to all of that. However, one thing I did specifically want to call out is how we're tackling some of those challenges. So when you set your budgets, you always need to have a degree of efficiency and transformation. And you might have heard this called things like cost improvement plans in other trusts. We specifically call our programme the Patient Quality and Productivity Work Stream. And that is our commitment to trying to make sure we improve all of the way we deliver care, to make sure that we get the money out by doing the right things. So not just stopping spending money on the basics, like printing and stationery and the like. That is important. But the really important thing is making sure we give the right care to the right patients at the right time, and are using every bit of our estate as efficiently as we can. And I'd like to call out a colleague of mine, Jim McLeish, who is Director of Quality Improvement. He is the figurehead for that programme, and his team, along with my team and the wider operational teams, work hand in glove to make sure that we are getting the best outcomes and really keeping an eye on quality and productivity as part of everything that we do. So we're doing that for the year ahead. It's greater than the previous year where we kind of launched the programme, and that continues apace. And my thanks to all of the team who are moving forwards with that programme. And as I said, we've got big capital developments that are happening that have a huge amount of oversight nationally and locally around whether we're spending money in the right areas. And we work very closely with the strategy and estates team and the operational teams to make sure we are moving those cases forward. So things like the surgical robot is a great example, but we hope to have even more big ticket capital developments we can show you with things like Community Diagnostic Centre, which we progress, and of course Alex Health, which is our big electronic transformation programme that's about to go live. So it's been, there's a lot of challenge in there. There's a lot of great work happening. And I'm really grateful to the entire trust for all of the effort they take in trying to lead and have support me in the financial agenda. If I can just take the moment to just ask for a little bit of housekeeping, if I could. We, as part of what we've just presented, have to submit our annual accounts and our annual report, which has been tested, which has been audited by our external audit partners. We've done a lot of work since the end of March to make sure all of our accounting is in the right place. And I'd like to just formally ask that we can approve and recommend the annual report and annual accounts be submitted formally at the end of this meeting. So I'll pause there, and I believe I'm handing back to Jim.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim McLeish, Director of Quality Improvement. All of this week, the NHS has been celebrating improvement and quality improvement as part of the National Quality Improvement Week, and no different here at PHT. During this presentation in this annual general meeting, you've seen lots and lots of examples of how our people each and every day are striving to improve how we do improvement. Part of that work we set out at the end of last year and the beginning of this year to really think about our change strategy aligned with PHT 2030. And I'm delighted to be here this morning, being able to share with you the very first launch of our change strategy across our organisation. This strategy was done with our people, for our people, and our population that we serve. And it's about setting out and establishing a change culture and approach that enables us to deliver all of the values and benefits of our PHT 2030 programme, and ultimately ensure that we become a modern, integrated and outstanding organisation. And I'm sure you'll agree, colleagues that are on the call, you've heard lots of examples of where that is. We thought as a group pulling this strategy together that we would align with the national programme, NHS Impact and the National Improvement Team, but we also needed to hear from our people around what the key drivers that needed to be in and the reasons we needed this strategy. You've heard this morning of our PHT 2030 plan and our strategic priorities. We need significant and far-reaching transformational change to be the organisation we want to be when we open our brand new hospital. And that was a clear reason for us developing this strategy with our people. You've heard this morning around examples around how we have to deliver against the NHS People Promise and moving our culture to an organisation that embraces learning, that celebrates improvement and that strives to do the very best. And I'm sure you've seen lots of examples where we're already doing that work, but there's more to do. And more importantly, we need evidence of a consistent approach to quality improvement. The key to being good and outstanding in other organisations, and one successful ingredient is sustained improvement in a way in which change is introduced, implemented and sustained. We'll hear today in the published report of Lord Darcy around the demand in our services and the unsustainable resource to meet demand. And it's important that we rise to that challenge as an organisation. You've heard from Ms. Vijay this morning how our surgical teams are engaging in technology in a really different way that not only drives better outcomes, better clinical outcomes for patients, but improves that productivity and improves how we manage our services. But we also need to make sure that we measure improvement and we deliver against our benefits. Alex Health, our digital transformation programme, goes live in less than 51 days. Amazing opportunity for us to benefit from real technological advance for the organisation, for our patients, for our people, and for the population we serve. But we need to make sure we measure against that. So this strategy sets out the need for a real outcomes framework, which will mean that we can measure around the impact of the improvement and are we delivering against that. And we are also working with the national team on NHS Impact. I'm working with NHS Impact improvement directors across NHS England. And as a board, we recently completed a self-assessment on where we are in that journey. And that's part of our change strategy and part of the baseline for improvement. Next slide, please. So our ultimate goal is to have a change culture and approach that enables us to achieve outstanding and sustainable results across all of our 5 Ps across our organisation, but ultimately ensuring that we deliver against our modern, integrated and outstanding ambition. And to do that, we've got 2 key drivers for change around our people, managing our culture, commitment, and confidence and capability. And we need to establish the infrastructure and tools that equip our people to be the best that they can be. And we've already started that journey. We've already improved as we move forward. But as I said before, there's much more to do. And it's exciting to see all of our teams taking the opportunity to be part of building that strategy and taking it from a strategy into the next stage, which is a delivery plan. Next slide. I think it's that last slide. So finally then, the change strategy will be launched this week as part of our National QI Improvement Week. A massive thank you to all the colleagues across the Trust who took the time to be part of building that. Thank you to my colleagues on the board who also took the time to complete our assessments and give us the baseline of which we're going to measure our improvement journey going forward. And thank you to all of the colleagues on the call today for allowing me the opportunity to come and share with you some of our plans on how the future and how we will support all of our PhD people to be the best they can be. So thank you so much. I'm handing back to Hattie, I think.
Thank you, Jim. So very big thank yous from Tom, from Sharon, from Tom, from Jim, and not least Vardini. It's now up to you to ask any questions or raise any points that you want to raise. We're happy to answer anything you want to pick up on. At the moment, there are no questions in the chat box nor hands raised, but I'll give it a few minutes and see if somebody wants to be brave and ask the first question. You've heard an awful lot this morning, so it is possible that you're overwhelmed by all the information you've heard and received. But I will give it a few more minutes and we'll try and fill the gap by me chatting to you about nothing particular. It's been a great attendance this year. We've had 135 attendees during the course of the meeting, which is just brilliant and really, really pleased by that. So it looks like having virtual annual general meetings seems to work for us. We should formally note for the minutes that we have formally approved the financial accounts and annual report, and that will now be submitted to the national team. And there's the slide recommending that. So, and I still have absolutely no questions, and we're beginning to have people drop off the attendance. So I think I am going to say thank you all of you for coming this morning. We hope it's been useful for you. Do please let us know if you liked the virtual annual general meeting, and also come back to us if there are any other questions that you want to ask outside the meeting. We're always happy to answer anything. So thank you all of you for coming, and we'll say that's it. Thank you for the meeting.